This is Not Your Father's Fundraising Podcast, a podcast about, you guessed it, nonprofit fundraising. This isn't the first podcast about it, but definitely not like any others you've listened to. This is a podcast for fundraisers, by fundraisers. No boring charts or the same stale best practices you've heard for years. No ideas that only work in theory here. No concepts from people who aren't in the same trenches as you are every single day. Each week, you'll get practical strategies and tips to craft messages that engage donors and raise more money. This isn't smoke and mirrors. Everything has been pressure tested in the real world. Plus, you can start using them as soon as the episode ends. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Thomas and Steve Thomas.
Well, hello, and welcome to Not Your Father's Fundraising Podcast, episode 26.
Woo!
We have passed the quarter pole towards 100.
And it's no longer impressive anymore, right? It's just kind of like,
Yeah,
here we go.
This is just what we do.
Yeah.
This is what we do on Monday nights. I'm Ryan Thomas, Vice President at Oneicity.
And I'm Steve Thomas, CEO and one of the founding partners of Oneicity.
We started this podcast because you know that this work doesn't stay at the office and it doesn't stay in your week or maybe even probably in your day. It consumes you. It's all around. It's all the time, and you're thinking about it. And we were talking about it in situations that was not fundraising appropriate and getting bored looks and getting kicked out of barbecues. So here we are. We have mics and a video, and you get to join us while we talk fundraising. And our company, Oneicity, we've been around for well more than a decade, and our team measures their experience in marketing and fundraising for nonprofits in the decades. We have people who have multiple decades, but we won't say how many. Because then you can start to do some math on birthdays and ages, and there are people who wouldn't like me giving away that kind of secret sauce.
Or they began when they were 4 years old. Could have been.
Yeah, that's true. Labor laws, child labor. But go ahead and send us your questions about people's birthdays. Send us guesses, whatever, along with comments or fundraising questions. You guys ought to get into this. I'm really struggling with this. I know I'm not the only one, or I hope I'm not the only one. Talk about this.
Would you explain that more clearly than last time you tried to explain that?
You spent 10 minutes on that, and I still don't know what you were saying.
What in the wide world of sports were you trying to do? Yeah.
Send that stuff to podcast@oneicity.com, and we love interacting. And if your question's good enough and we get enough of them, you'll be in our next mailbag episode. We've done 2. They're my favorite, and hopefully we'll be doing more of those. And give us your 5-star reviews. If you take a screenshot of a 5 or 4-star review and send it in with your question, I can guarantee that it will be in the mailbag.
Oh, yeah.
I'll bribe. It's no problem. Doesn't bug me.
Yeah.
So podcast@Oneicity, questions, screenshots of good feedback, but we will take 3.5, 4-star feedback. We just prefer more stars.
Not that we're begging, but really,
Not at all, but we kind of are.
help us out.
Yeah, come on. Please.
Hello, is this thing
Hello.
on?
So in this episode, we're talking donor retention.
Apparently so.
We are retaining donors, trying to retain listeners, trying not to retain water. But before we get to...
I can't believe you went with that. I heard that in my head, and I thought, nope. Let the editor catch that one. You know, my little mental editor.
Oh, man, I didn't...
It just popped out. That's great.
Yeah,
I love that.
Okay.
That's great.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
it's good.
Yeah, it'll work. Can't take it back now because we don't edit.
We don't edit unless it's really bad.
If it's really bad, we do.
There was that one time.
Yeah, there was that one time. And it's not for what you think it was. I still have a perfect record with language on this thing.
How far off topic do I have you?
A lot.
A lot. Okay, well, get it back.
And we never start with the topic, though. We always start with something we've seen in the wild, fundraising related,
In the mailbox.
adjacent.
In the inbox.
Yeah,
On the
mailbox, inbox, on a
your
billboard.
windshield screen, wherever.
something we've encountered that we will then at the end land the plane and relate to fundraising.
And you, the listener or viewer, gets to decide, that was a 7. That was a 5.
Or you guys should just stop that segment because it's never accurate. Anyway, mine is the marketing website. I think it's technically a marketing website. It's called Really Good Emails. And they kind of, I guess, crowdsource. They subscribe to a bunch of things and put in marketing emails from businesses. And I've seen one nonprofit, but it's mostly for profit. And just kind of say, hey, here's what's good about it. Here's what we would do differently, that kind of thing. And I got an email from them with the subject line, "Want to be our CEO?" And they apparently, I didn't know this till this email, are all part-timers. Nobody is full-time.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Everybody has other jobs, but they are growing and they need someone to be full-time and lead the team in certain ways. And so they're looking for a CEO, and they said, they listed some revenue numbers,
right?
User numbers in the email.
Oh, love that. That transparency is bold.
Subscribe and just let us know if you want to be our CEO. We'll schedule an interview. And how this sort of relates to nonprofits is finding people to be on your team is difficult.
Yeah.
Ideally, you want someone who is passionate about what you do. Because if they don't really care about what you're doing and the problem you're solving, helping you fundraise for that is going to be a little difficult. So starting from your donor base to try to find someone who is applicable could be an interesting way to find someone to add to your team.
It really could be.
Now, you are going to get a lot of people
you don't want to hire.
You don't want. And
yeah.
To the point where I might mention in your email that this is a long shot, blah, blah, blah. But with how difficult it can be to find the right talent or somebody who you can then mold into the right talent.
Yep.
It's worth a shot. And it got my attention and thought, our clients ought to use this for not your CEO. Right. You should definitely not hire or look for your next CEO or chairman of the board.
We work for most CEOs, for most of our client CEOs. That would be awkward for them to approve that email in advance.
That's true.
Kind of fun.
Looking for your next CEO. Ours is on its way out. But would you like to be a graphic designer? I don't know.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah, that's fun. That's a nice. I've looked at that website way back, but I don't follow them, and that is
it's overwhelming
email that you'd get. I mean, you'd read that email. That's great.
Oh yeah,
fun. Okay, mine is Mine in the Wild is an actual real live invitation I got a few episodes back. You were kicking around a local, in the nicest possible way, kicking around a local charity who had sent you an invitation to an event and never really gave you pertinent details like what the event was going to benefit.
Yep.
The details on what would happen.
I don't even think I got cost.
Yeah, it was miserable. So
it really was.
I received this in the mail, I guess a couple days ago, and it's from one of our clients for an event they're doing, and I can talk about it because we and our team didn't actually produce this.
Yeah.
This was produced internally for one of their events. And it is so interesting that the headline is, join us for our second annual virtual blah, blah, blah thing that they're doing. And they are in a location that is really getting second wave stuff with the COVID thing. And so they're just doing their virtual again. And so you have that as the headline. The subhead is, this benefit is to help, and you fill in the blank what they do. Very clearly,
that's
not in mission language,
Nope.
not a mission vision kind of language. This. If you're a donor, the second sentence you read tells you if you participate, this is what it's going for.
Yep.
And I thought, well done. So, in the wild, the lesson there is as you're doing events, as you're doing invitations, the ability to zoom back out to, our famous, you can't read the label on the jar you're in. The mistakes that happen are that you forget to remind donors what this is about.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Nice.
In the wild.
Next is try this.
And so I'm just going to call out, because this will be audible on the audio.
Yeah.
Is the cicada right outside the office window that has tuned up.
Yeah, he's going. It's not the brood. Was it brood X cicadas?
I don't know.
We don't get
the murder
those.
cicadas. No, but we get the loud ones.
They're really loud.
And between Reacher the dog barking and the cicada, there's a little more noise on this episode than...
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Yeah. So anyway,
we just have a lot going on.
It's live. Yeah, that's who we are.
Live to tape.
Yeah, okay.
So try this.
Try this.
Something that you can put into practice basically right now. Wait till the episode's over, but as soon as we're done, you can put this in. It's not a long tail. Our date episode had a lot of things that you should be putting into practice, but are going to take some time.
Yeah.
This won't.
Yeah.
Mine is look at where you can use your donor's first name.
Oh, okay.
And obviously, you're probably using it people are probably using it in the email dear first name or indirect mail.
The alligators.
Yeah, the alligators with the data field.
Yeah.
And you're probably doing that at the beginning of your letter or newsletters.
Hopefully, dear
so-and-so. But look for places in the copy. And on direct mail, it can get more difficult, just anything on paper, because you have to pay attention to where you can put that, both from a space and ink and
printing
and litho and laser, all that stuff. But look for places to use somebody's first name, because our brains, as we scan, are just scanning. And the first thing I do when I open my mail, just out of the mailbox, is I make sure it's my mail and it's got my name on it. And if I open it and I'm scanning, my name or my wife's name is going to jump out at me. And it gets us to stop. And so you can use that in any sentence where you really want to draw the I.
Right.
Sometimes it can be your call to action. Sometimes it can be some kind of impact sentence. But if you want them to have a high likelihood of stopping right there, toss their first name in and you'll get their attention.
Yeah, I think it was Dale Carnegie who talked about that our first names are some of the most important sounds that individuals want to hear and are drawn to and love to hear.
I mean, it makes sense.
And the visual it's powerful. It's almost hard to not look at that. To the previous episode, or the episode before the previous, the data episode, that this gets into data hygiene, getting the name right.
Yeah,
because I love the people. I'm Steve. Formally and officially Steven but with a V.
Yep.
And I can't tell you the number of LinkedIn solicitation emails I get somehow that it's to Steven with a PH. How do they do that?
Because you're not even pulling.
Yeah, it's just nuts. So anyway, get the name right.
The bot they have doing their LinkedIn.
Well, Brian, is that the last of your...
That was good. That took me a second. I was like,
you actually even paused. That was good. I gotcha.
Okay. All right. So what's yours?
So when I spent the afternoon writing copy, and I was going back and reviewing what I had written, and I heard the editor that I hired when we did Donoricity. And one of the things that guy said, because he was somebody who had edited several business type books, and he said, every time you end a chapter, you need to end that chapter getting them to go to the next chapter. Which reminded me of some copywriting advice I'd heard years and years ago, but I hadn't thought about it, was your first sentence, the job of the first sentence is get the reader's attention, the scanner's attention, and get them to read the next sentence. And the job of that sentence is to get them to read the next sentence. And you can't make it artificial, and it takes time to practice. So if you are someone who is approving copy or writing copy, look at the flow that way. Do you grab the donor's attention or the scanner or reader's attention, or do you assume they want to read what you're writing? Horrible idea to assume they want to read it. Great idea to say, did that sentence make them want to read the next sentence? Did this sentence make them want to read the next sentence? And if you do that, you will not do it perfectly with every sentence. That just doesn't happen. But you can get that where that is part of your copy, where you're drawing, you're pulling and I like saying scanner and reader, because if you say reader, that gives far more attention than the person is actually giving to it.
Yeah.
So draw them in. Let them come on through the copy. Pull them in.
That's really good. And I mean, it is that stop you down. Now take one step.
Keep on coming.
Now take another step.
Come on.
Now take another step.
Come on. If you thought that was interesting, look at this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you thought that felt good, this will feel even better.
It's similar to the way shows work
Exactly.
on TV.
Exactly.
Sometimes they do it on Netflix, which I kind of feel like you don't really need to do that because I'm probably going to watch the next one. But week to week on broadcast TV, you've got to have a cliffhanger or a trailer for the next one, something to make me think, okay, I got to watch this next week.
That's exactly right.
That's even easier because you just turn a page in a book.
Yeah.
So retaining donors.
Mm-hmm.
First, let's just say the obvious. Why does somebody want to retain a donor?
Well, because you've typically spent some effort, time, energy, money to influence them, help them understand why they would want to give to your cause or organization. And every dollar counts, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it is about keeping them in. In the business world, it's about retaining customers. At church, it's about keeping the back door closed. This is analogous to all of those things. Once someone is a donor, you just don't want to lose them. Second reality is you're gonna.
Yeah. You're not going to keep all of them. You're not going to keep 80% of them. And
well,
okay. All right. I mean,
some of us do.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So let's start with, we've explained this is why you want to try to keep them, because you don't want to have to re-get them again.
Yeah. Or replace them.
Yep.
If you because you will spend more replacing them, finding the replacement for them, both in terms of time, energy, and money, than you will retaining them.
Yeah. Because a donor, if you break out the cost it took to acquire them, rarely are they giving that much in the first year. If you keep them year to year, they begin to return on that investment.
Yeah.
So you want to keep them.
Yeah.
You don't want to you got to always find more, but you want to have to find less and less to stay even or above.
Yeah.
How do you calculate donor retention? Let's start with that definition as well.
So Chris Hoots, who was on, was it 23 or 24? That was the data episode. Recently. She's traveling, and so I spent some time on the phone with her today, double checking what I'm getting ready to say.
Which is pretty par for our course. I mean, when we get into anything like this, we say, okay, let's check with Hoots to make sure that we've got that definition right.
That's all right. So, because she's the data queen. So let's just say, and I didn't approve this with her, but I want to say, donor retention is both a statistic and a reality.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
All right.
Yeah.
So the reality is you have donors who are constantly dying, donors who are constantly getting wooed away by somebody else, donors who forget you, donors who get distracted, donors who have financial upsets and no longer, there's a variety of reasons. Let's just say almost never having to do with something you've done wrong. You very seldom,
that's true.
really very seldom have you made a donor mad. So It is about some.
And often those guys tell you about it.
They will frequently, hopefully, tell you about it, because that's a shot at doing it. So the statistical reality is, and this is one of those places that it would really be ideal for you literally to be sitting over there so we could draw on the whiteboard, which is right over there. Okay, so let's first say the key is with retention it is comparing donors who are continuing in this period. This is where I got into hoot speak from the previous period. So, all right,
and the reason you say period is
so you have to have a fixed point in time to compare this fixed point in time with that fixed point in time. So just think about it as calendar year, January 1st to December 31st. So you're comparing two fixed windows. Now I have to say there are those who do this on moving windows with month counts and that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to tell you, we don't do any of that craziness because it is very difficult to compare back in time. It's very hard for me to compare this period to last period if you've counted months back. So if you're looking at 12 months from today, that's very hard to look at 30 days from now.
Well, not every month is created equal.
It's just a nightmare. So always think fixed windows unless, you just fixed
Yeah, there's
windows.
really
So we do
no good
two
reason.
periods,
Yep.
calendar year or fiscal year. So those are, for clients, that allows you to have two fixed periods in every year, every 12 months, you've got two of those.
Yeah, because we don't lock you in, so it's two each.
Yeah.
In January when we meet with clients, we go over the calendar year,
Typically.
and then throughout the year, based
Sometime
on when the
middle
fiscal
of the
ends.
year, often depending on their fiscal year.
Yeah,
And if you want to hear my whole speech on how to do a fiscal year, that's another podcast. But
I don't think we're going to get a lot of listeners.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating. So anyway,
gosh.
it's worth it.
I'm not doing that one.
Okay. Oh, it'll be great.
Okay.
So I'll bring my puppet. Okay. So two fixed periods. You're comparing and we'll just stay in calendar year
Yeah,
for the
that's
simple
just
thing.
easier.
Okay. So what you do is in a calendar year, you're looking at active donors. Active donors.
So donors who get lots of steps, they close their rings on the Apple Watch.
Yeah. So
What's an active donor?
An active donor are people, these are donors who in the period gave a gift, a financial gift, at least one. You don't get extra credit for multiples in this case. So you gave a gift in the period, right?
In a calendar year.
So in the calendar year.
Let's just say 2019. I gave a gift in calendar 2019.
Great. Okay, in calendar 2019. So active. So that is, and there are three groups in this. Okay, and this is going to be on screen and video because there's no way I can't do that. And if you're listening on
pulling
audio,
over to take notes.
No, they're not. They're just going to go to the YouTube channel. So, so you have three groups continuing. These are people who gave this in 2019 and in 2018. They continued from the previous period.
Got it.
Then you have people who gave in 2019 but were lapsed in 2018 and 2017. So it might have been 2016 since they gave their gift. And so they have been reactivated. They were lapsed and they've been brought back. They've come home, right? These are huge people, valuable, terrific.
Come back into the tribe.
Good folks, right? Then there are new. They've never given before 2019.
It's their first year.
First gift date is the way that's calculated. So you total that group and you're just counting how many of those people fit those three that fit that active category, right?
Yeah.
And then we compare that to 2020, same thing. Who continued in 2020? Who did we reactivate because they skipped 2019? And who was new in 2020? And then you build a ratio. So for instance, say you had 100 donors in 2019.
100 donors.
100 donors. Pardon me, in 2020. In 2020, you had 100 donors.
Okay.
100 active donors. And that's the total of continuing, reactivated, and brand new.
Any type.
Right.
I gave you money.
Yep. And then in 2021, okay, then 65 of those continued. or were new or whatever. So that gives you a 65% retention rate.
Okay.
Okay, because 35% did not roll forward. So we have to say there's a lot of some software calculates this for you.
Yeah.
Some of the donor databases.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine. If that happens, just know what they're doing. Read into the detail, because
Or have someone on your data team who does it.
Somebody explain to you. There are those who calculate this that do some exclusions and don't do this relatively clean way of doing it.
Yeah.
And they exclude new. There's some of these
without calling it out. It just
they probably call. So we're not gonna assume or impugn motives. We're just gonna say one of the hazards with retention rate numbers is that it's easy to not be comparing apples to apples, and you're doing it unknowingly. So one of the reasons we do this so cleanly and easily and relatively clearly is that it allows for there to be very little misunderstanding, because this is the cleanest, simplest way to do it. You're not getting into only looking at certain segments. You're not getting into looking at with people who only have given you multiple gifts. This is the cleanest way to do it. It's a simple calculation once you do the data, and it allows you to say, here's how many people who are donors are continuing and how many people we're refilling. So now I have to have the bucket illustration. So then it's like a bucket of water, and there will be a hole in your bucket.
Dear Liza. Okay. Yeah, you
picked that up. I was waiting for it.
So you're dripping donors. They're seeping out.
It happens, right?
Yeah.
Death, new business distractions. All the things that happen.
All the things.
A few episodes back, you were sort of wishing boomers would die faster so that you geriatric millennials could take over more. But so the situation is we're wanting to understand how much leakage is going out the bottom of the bucket.
How much of the bucket still has water in it?
Because our goal at a minimum is to replace as much water donors every year as is going out, so that we're at 100% in this as donors are.
So that's 100% retention rate.
Yeah, which is a great goal, and is probably not going to happen unless you've got like four donors,
and 3 of them are your family.
and they're very young and healthy.
Yeah,
and they never get distracted, and you're always there.
Checking up on them,
knocking on their doors. Like,
hey,
have you given your gift?
Been a while.
So, and this is the statistical part that allows you every year or every 6 months, depending on how you're doing the windows you're looking at it, to be able to know how am I doing, so that you're not surprised, because this retention rate, on one hand, it matters not. You cannot write a check on a retention rate.
No,
right? So it's only about cash in the bank. The problem is a retention rate, as we have seen when we've gone in with new clients, retention rates in the 50% range, those sneak up on you. Because you're only paying attention to the dollars, and suddenly it's like, oh, wait a minute, why is our mail count so low? Or you've had a 3-year run of 50% retention and haven't done anything about it.
And there's usually something, or at least the times I've seen it, it's usually something starts to happen to the top line income. Things have been going along perfectly, swimmingly, and all of a sudden there's a dip. And in digging into, what happened, often it comes down to some sort of donor retention. Like you said, it could be, you're mailing less people on your direct mail, so that's why your direct mail and newsletters are raising less money. Or, why are we doing that? Well, it's because you've lost donors, and it doesn't make fiscal sense to mail back 5 years every month.
Yeah, maybe.
But so paying attention to that is sort of like one of the dials you ought to be checking on your car. It's not as important as your gas tank, That's sort of like income, because if you run out of gas, you're stopping. If you run out of income, But check your oil pressure.
Well, it's like one of the things that when we go into something bigger than a per project kind of basis, where we're getting to sit with the client and think about strategy, I want to know, you want to know, we want to know some data, and some of the data reporting, absolutely, some of this income and some of the big pieces. But retention rate, and then some of the granular portions of retention rate that we do, really does inform how things are. And it is really distressing to have to talk to leadership about your retention rate is a big hole in your bucket. You were focused on your dollars, but the bigger problem is you are losing donors at a rate that you have to do something today so that in 3 years you are not in serious trouble, because the income is what you're noticing, but the donor retention is where the problem really resides. Fix the donor retention problem, and the income typically takes care of itself.
So the burn rate in the startup world.
Exactly. So,
that's why you should care.
Yep.
That's the impact it can have.
Yep.
So now let's talk about, because I don't want to do too many numbers in a row.
Oh my gosh.
Let's talk about how you do that, because
how do you retain donors?
You can be thinking, okay, I'm in. I'd like to retain as many of my donors as I can, but what do I do? And the thing is, you can't do it. This is not try this. This is not something you can just say, all right, I'm retaining my donors right now, and as soon as the episode's over, I'm going to retain them. Got them. I'm just going to grab hold of them. You really have to look at this as a rolling cycle.
Yeah.
You just get on it now.
It's a great point. This is deep strategy that if you don't pay attention to, you're going to have a problem later without question.
Yeah.
If you're not paying attention to how you're retaining your donors and what your donor retention strategies are, you have a really rough road ahead. Or in all candor, not to put too fine a point on it, your successor is going to be dealing with
because you'll be gone. And
the fact.
It starts with the gift. The beginning of that cycle starts with a gift. You need to start retaining your donor as soon as that check clears or the credit card gets approved.
Yep.
The thank you letter that you have to do because the IRS, that needs to have some sort of non-taxi attorney language that makes it sound like a human had to do this and not a CPA.
See previous episodes on validation and feedback.
Then you ought to have some sort of separate validation if you can. It would be a great thing if you've got the budget to do some sort of new donor impact, whether that be in direct mail, you can do an impact, or in email. It's really easy to do a new donor email drip, a series of emails that can welcome somebody through. Essentially, what we want people to do is not just remind them why they gave recently, help them see what all the organization does elsewhere, remind them of what else is going on, and as another reminder, here's what we do. Here are all the things in through all this is what your gift has done.
Yeah.
When you give to us, you're doing these things. And then even in your appeals, then you toss them into the regular stream and you're asking for gifts. You need to look for lines of language in your copy that validate the donor.
Right.
This so-and-so is playing in their sloth enclosure that was provided by donors like you. And little phrases like that throughout validate somebody, sprinkle validation breadcrumbs over the 12-month period so that when you come to the topic they really care about, or to whatever it is that they really want to give to, they're more apt to do it because they've felt validated. You've been around.
And the point of validation is to keep a donor understanding that their gift made a difference. That's the donor's understanding. Your reason for, as the organization, is you're stewarding, you're being careful with the investment that has been made for that donor, and so you connect with them that way. And you have to understand both the why and the how of that to make that work well.
It's not easy.
Well, and one of the things that I would also say is that how you think about audiences. So, for instance, your donor base is unified as one group, but within that you have people who are relatively new. Hopefully, you have people who have lapsed that you're trying.
They're
to
gone. They've already hopped out of the bucket.
Yeah, trying to reacquire. You have people who are steady and continuing, and then you have people that aren't in your donor database yet, or that are non-donors yet, that you're trying to get past the first gift or to give their first gift so that they become in this process. And so how you think about audiences begins to play out a lot in this piece as well.
Yeah, that's true. But that's how you do it. I mean, or at a high level, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
It's why you do it. You start trying to do it. It's always good to know what your goal is, because 100% is not going to happen. It's not possible. We already talked about that.
Well, it is not possible with current donors. It is very possible when you're reacquiring lapsed and adding new to the mix.
Sure,
you can balance
that
out.
Yeah. In what when we take all three types into account, 100% isn't going to happen.
Which means you got to be constantly doing new donors, acquiring new donors, and you've got to constantly be going after lapsed donors for as long as you can possibly make the ROI on that effort pay off, which is probably longer than you think it is.
Yeah.
So, for instance, talking about lapsed donors. So we did some analysis. It's been 10 years ago, but I suspect it holds up. That once a donor went to 13 months since their last gift, they became incrementally more difficult to acquire than if you'd gotten that gift at 12 months. So just think about it.
Yeah.
What it means is it fell out of some kind of rhythm with them. And once a donor crossed the 18-month mark, they became...
That was another level more difficult.
Even more difficult, right? And so sometimes people will give up on a donor once they get into 24 months out, right? After it's been 2 years since we've heard from you.
They're never going to give again.
Yeah,
it's never going to work.
Which may be true.
Possibly.
With some donors. But if they loved you before, it could be that the timing isn't right. You have something wrong in your data about them. We've seen that happen. Or you haven't looked at why they were giving in the past. And so depending on your size and depending on how you communicate, most organizations have a variety of things. We do a lot of rescue mission work and people helping kind of ministries. And they typically have 2 to 3 to 4 different big categories of things that they ask donors to give to. Meals, some shelter, some people helping recover, those kind of things. And it could be that you haven't asked them for what they really love. It's like Chris and I, we love to give to feed people. And we can't even explain why we love that so much. And we've had people try to explain to us why that's not a good idea for us to do. And we just were like, well,
this is what we want to do.
We love this.
You can't tell me what to do.
Exactly.
Can't tell me what to give to.
So maybe there are pockets of your donor database that that you need to go back to with what they first loved to get them to come back. It's critical to think that way. The other thing is, if you're doing, as we do for clients, targeted ask amounts, and we've had ask amount conversation on this podcast where we're talking dollars, what we're asking a donor to do. Sometimes you may be asking at a level that is too high for that donor at this point in time, even though they have a history of doing the other. So one of the things that you can do is reduce your ask amount and see if it's a dollar issue. The dollar amount you're asking them for somehow is not connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are lots of ways.
Lots of ways.
But if you're looking and you keep trying,
Yeah.
is going to be better than not looking and not trying.
Yeah.
And either way, it's still important.
Yeah.
Whether you're doing it or not, you should be, and people are falling off, you're not replacing them.
Exactly.
So you may be thinking in your head, okay, maybe I am doing this, maybe I'm not. Either way, what's a good number? We get asked this
Oh, yeah. What's a good retention
constantly.
rate? Yeah.
What's a good retention rate?
Yeah.
First, it doesn't really matter what a good retention rate is, because outside of 100, which is just perfect and there's no leakage in your bucket, you can't really compare somebody else's bucket. Somebody else's donors are different than yours, whether that's geographic area, whether that's mission, what you're doing versus what they're doing, or size, or...
So let's unpack that a little bit. So if you're an organization who does primarily events, you're going to have a different retention rate than an organization who is, say, we'll call it a child sponsorship. It's built around a monthly sponsorship kind of thing. You will have very different retention rates.
But still doing good work.
Oh, yeah.
And still doing your thing.
Yeah.
But if you compare their retention rate to yours, you can say, oh my gosh, somebody needs to get fired.
Or I need a raise and need a promotion. And maybe you do, but maybe not because of the retention
Not because
rate.
of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't, feel free to Google all you want to about retention rates.
And we have. I pulled up the ones that we grab from people or grab from organizations when we get asked.
Yeah. And we have some case studies on the website that talk about some retention rate numbers.
Yeah.
Too. So there's that.
It talks
that's
about
there.
that.
Yeah.
And it's there. The American Fundraising Professionals, their fundraising effectiveness project, for them in 2020, nationally, the retention rate is 44%. So,
which means out of 100 donors,
they lost 55 or 56. I mean, depending on how you round.
Yeah.
I then found a historical table and I looked back to 2005, because everything involving 2020 is going to be kind of weird.
Yeah, and it'll either be really high or really low,
and
depending on who you're talking to.
And so you want to look around the obvious anomaly year. Yeah. I went back to 2005, and their average of nationwide retention rates is 45%.
Okay.
So on one hand, one organization says you can just expect to lose 56 of your 100 donors all the time, every time.
They're just driving off the mark. Yeah.
But Donor Perfect, which is a giving platform, database, kind of one of these catch-all things.
We have several clients on.
Yeah. They do their numbers, and they are, a lot of their numbers are part of the FEP, the American Fundraising Professionals Fundraising Effectiveness Project.
And they're Americans and professional.
Yeah, they're both. Donor Perfect has a number of 40%. And looking historically, I think it was 42%. So that's two respected people going nationally in the same time periods, theoretically the same groups of people getting two very different numbers.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know.
And it all boils down to, those are great big aggregated groups, which if you love that number, you go, it's a great big group, it must be right.
Yeah.
If you hate that number, you say, it's a great big group, it can't be very accurate.
And so I did the same, because I went back and looked at our couple years of numbers for our clients, and
did we beat 40%?
We did beat 40%. We even beat 44%.
Oh, good.
In 2020, our average, the mean, if you are technical and number specific, was 69.6%.
Could I round that up to 70?
You can go 70%. The median, if you are laying out your numbers, that's closer to what one can expect as what that means, was 71% in 2020. But 2020, for a lot of people, was a great year.
Yeah.
It was an awesome year.
Nothing but a weird year.
So I went back to 2019
okay, good.
to do the same thing.
These would be different.
They fell off.
Uh-oh.
So in 2019, the mean was 63%.
Huge drop.
Huge drop, but still,
And
it was still way higher than 44 or 40.
If you're commuting and driving on the podcast, that huge drop was like
8%.
8%.
No, it was 7% with the round.
Okay, so, yeah.
The median was 63%.
Yeah.
So no matter how you slice
Still 50% better than any of the national things.
easy.
Right.
And these are people who love what we do, have leaned into all the things we're talking about in the podcast. And so
even when they don't know it, that's what
they
I
don't
love.
know. But this is proof that if you listen to this podcast, your retention rate's going to go up. Guaranteed. But the reason we toss this in is one, a subtle plug for the agency. We feel like we do good work. It's nice to be able to easily show.
Even if you don't want to hire us, here's some proof, if you will, that you may not think we know what we're talking about, but in the real world, donors respond to our strategies. Maybe just because we pick extraordinarily wonderful clients, which I will say, we have extraordinarily wonderful clients, and the strategies sort of work for them.
But that and to be clear, that's across. I only did what we call first full service clients.
Yeah.
So people we're working with through a full fiscal year.
Yep. And who are willing to have us at the table for strategy, not just do this project that way.
And removing some of those outliers, this is 9 or 10 clients.
I think that counts 10.
And so
it's not a onesie-twosie thing.
Yeah. But if you don't want to hire us, fine. Enjoy your 40% retention rate. Not really. But I used it to show.
We don't need that sales dude after all.
Yeah,
we don't
need.
Awesome.
We got me.
Yeah.
It shows the intention because one of the first things we do with any new client is look at retention rate and go at retention rate because, like you said earlier, if you fix that, so many other things just fall in line.
Begins to float up.
And so even if you don't want to hire us, even if you think a lot of our ideas are whack or crazy, that shows that if you focus on retention rate, even as weird as it seems,
eyes on the prize, baby,
it will work.
Yeah. And if you think audiences, so retention rate can be overwhelming, but if you think audiences, I got to find new donors. I got to find people who gave me one gift. I got to get them to give a second gift.
Yep. You're not a donor until you give a second gift.
People who are current, I got to keep them current. And then people who have lapsed, how do I get them to come back? And if you have a strategy, some messaging, some impact, some stuff for each of those audiences, just the strategy of laying that out and thinking about when am I talking to them this way, that will begin to change the game.
Yep. We may have to do a second one, maybe not next week, but here's how to lay that out. I don't know, maybe. We'll see.
We got to do a planning episode sometime.
Yeah, okay. We should plan to plan.
It will be tough on audio because I got to have a spreadsheet.
That's true. Yeah.
We'll think about that.
We'll think about that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit on retention. It's important. If you focus on it, you're going to be happy. And if anybody you're hiring or working with doesn't focus on that,
fire them.
Yeah. And that's not bluster. I mean, literally, that's like a mechanic who doesn't care about your engine or your oil change. Yeah. Just like, don't worry about changing it.
Yeah, don't
it's fine.
That. We'll just it'll be fine. When that red light comes on the dash, then we'll worry about it. So one of the things I want to say is if we've talked about it in other episodes, my weird theory about weight loss. And it's a weird theory, but it's supported by evidence and fact that if you get on the scales every day, if you're trying to lose weight, getting on the scales every day, if you're intentional about wanting to lose weight, you will lose weight. What you pay attention to from an empirical number standpoint, you will do well. So first thing, if you don't know your retention rate last full period, calendar or fiscal year, find out today.
Yep.
And then if you're happy, hold a parade, tell your boss, tell the board, get a raise. If you don't know that retention rate, find out. Get it calculated. Email us and we'll
help
you. I don't know how that would work, but whatever. Constantly saying we'll do things and have no idea how we'll get it done, and we'll get it done. So do that. Once you get that number in your head and you go, oh my gosh, it's 47%? Or
whatever
it's
it is,
57 or whatever it is, then you will begin to think about it. And as you begin to think about it, when you're doing your year-end appeal, you will say, wait a minute, are we talking to lapsed donors in this? Do we have a lapsed donor segment or a piece or a part of that?
It'll pop up in the back of your mind, and you'll do it without thinking, without it being such a focus, and you'll naturally find early opportunities to do it.
Exactly. So again, the reminder, it's reality and a statistic. Find the number so that you can deal with the reality.
Yeah. All right. So next is On Your Radar, which is something that you and I pass stuff back and forth. You got to read. It's not super important. Doesn't have to be read now. It's not always directly fundraising related, but it's interesting and helps you think. So you go first. I went first in the last few.
Okay. So I'm gonna, excuse me, I'm gonna wave a book around on video. Well, I'm actually waving around on audio, but on audio you won't be able to see it.
Yeah, I mean you're waving it around either way.
Yeah. So this is I was looking for something today and realized I had alluded to Roy Williams, the Wizard of Ads.
Such a great name.
But I haven't really talked about it. And there are people who get irritated with, who is he to call himself the Wizard of Ads? Well, he's the Wizard of Ads is who he is. Roy Williams down in Austin, he has a company called Williams Marketing. He is famous for the Wizard Academy, which he founded. It is one of the most interesting, and I need to, for proper disclosure, say we are Wizard partners, so we have a business relationship with Roy. Roy is one of the deepest, most unique thinkers that I've ever met or been with. He is somebody that I have been in seminars with, that he has put on, that I have, on the talk, people are always talking about mind blown. Well, he does that regularly. Roy he does not deal in our world of nonprofits or charity work, for reasons that are pretty hilarious. He just doesn't want to deal with people who want to deal with donors. He wants to deal with business people. And he is an ad guy. And he works with organizations that are service businesses like air conditioning companies and big plumbing companies. And we're talking about big companies. Ryan leads our team that does work with Wizard Partners on the digital side, and we see this work. He is an extraordinary thinker that should be on your radar. He is a person of faith, although you might not know that instantly when you're around him. Yeah, because he has no artifice. He's not pretending in any way. He doesn't really worry about what you think about him. But he's a genius. And I don't say that lightly. No, I wish I was as smart as him.
So a lot of people are probably thinking all the things you've said are your opinion. You're a partner of him.
Yeah.
So the way to know that this is accurate and empirical is he is making himself tons of money, and he is making tons of money for his clients using almost exclusively radio.
Yeah,
that's really what it boils down to.
And let's all check our watches. This is 2021, which is most of us would have thought radio was dead. So it's all broadcast. They do.
Yeah, it's all terrestrial, radio. AM, FM radio.
Oh man,
and that's the thing you need to take away from that, because if you don't look at it with that lens, a lot of the things he says are easy to write off as crazy or nonsensical, but he's making money on radio.
Yeah.
FM, AM radio. He is making so much money. I don't think we could legally even tell you how much he's making, but if we did, you'd say we were making it up.
Yeah,
it's massive.
He's a successful, very narrow niche business person who you can't just walk in and hire because he has done so well and he's so exclusive, and you really even have trouble hiring some of the other partners, which is the reason they're partners is he got tired of
He farms out the work.
telling people no. All of that said to say, if you're curious at all about this whole thing, and I can tell you stories about Roy and the way he thinks and some of the things he's come up with, but the best thing to do is for you to go to MondayMorningMemo.com. MondayMorningMemo.com. Put your email address in, and then every Monday you will get an email from him with his thinking. I'll give you a little clue. There'll be an image at the top of the email. Click that because that's called the rabbit hole, and that will take you into an even more interesting section of the way Roy thinks. And you'll meet Indy Beagle. So Roy should be on your radar.
Yeah, and that sounds dumb. Click and meet a dog and click an image. But again, this guy's making money on radio, and the things he's doing can really apply to nonprofits.
It is rare. It is a rare week that I do not use something I learned from Roy, or that Roy put me on to, or Roy provoked me in a late night conversation. And I said, because there have been a couple of times I've said, you just can't be right about that. And he has this wonderful, charming, winsome smile where he says, yes, I am. And then he usually wanders off. And when I dig down into it, he's right. He's the guy that a few episodes back I was talking about, the Henry Ford
with the
assembly
deconstruction
line, the deconstruction line. Over and over, these stories that I hear or applications that I learn about or the way to think about writing or creating, Roy has influenced. Deep thinker. Austin, Texas is where he's based. Do a little research.
Yeah.
Roy Williams, not the basketball coach.
Yeah, different guy.
Different guy.
All right, so mine is, I'll go quick. Ryan Reynolds, he is the famous actor. And he's a big ad guy. And
I didn't know that.
yeah, he owns an ad firm called Maximum Effort.
Well, I like that.
And he owns some brands that he does marketing for. And he writes a lot of his own ads.
I had no idea.
And so he owns...
He's a pretty boy who actually does work.
Yeah, and he started... He
I said that in
started
a
by...
nice way.
Yeah.
That's another pretty boy.
Sure.
I'm talking
That's
about,
right.
Yeah, one pretty boy to another.
He started by doing shift jobs. And, he was working... even after he got his first job on TV, he didn't get anything else. So he started working at supermarkets late at night. Learned about effort, showing up, all the details. And so he does research, doesn't rely on his name. And Aviation Gin is one of his big brands that he owns. And then Mint Mobile is a cell phone company.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he runs them, and he does not all of their creative, but a lot of their creative. And after the infamous Peloton wife ad at Christmas.
Yep.
I think that was 2019.
Probably.
It was, I think, a week later, Aviation Gin, his company, came out with an ad of that actress from the Peloton wife commercial sitting with friends at the bar, drinking their gin and kind of griping about life. And it was legal took care of making sure he didn't mention Peloton or the ad.
But it was a follow-on. They were riding.
It was very much everybody dunked on this situation and that woman and her husband's dynamic.
And there she is
And then
commiserating.
Here she is commiserating with friends, drinking Aviation Gin.
Oh, wow.
And it was like a week and a half later. And he said he wrote it. He wrote the ad in an afternoon.
He actually wrote the ad.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
He writes so many of their ads.
Oh, I find that so interesting.
And he said he was talking to Adweek because they interviewed him and he talked at one of their big conferences last year. And he had a few things that got my attention and apply. Because one of the things he did point out that doesn't apply is that one of the reasons he can make his brand skyrocket is he's the owner. So if he writes the ad, there's no approval step.
Oh, he doesn't have to worry about the committee.
But that doesn't apply. However, he did say that bureaucracy stifles creativity. And so, he is the owner and writes the own stuff. So if he likes it, it's going to run. But he said you need to give your creative people license to create.
Yeah.
So in the nonprofit, for you fundraiser, let your creatives create. Install a review process to make sure nobody is going to see something that doesn't work or offends or goes the wrong direction. But don't do that as they go. Let them create.
Yeah.
Because if they're looking over their shoulder or they're trying to meet with you, they're not creating.
The best stuff won't ever see the light of day if and Hoots and I have a thing about baby ducks, right? You know, there's these little fragile ideas, right?
Yeah.
And you got to let them grow.
Yeah, you got to hold on to them.
Yeah.
And so review things, but give your people license to create, time to let things bake, because you won't believe the things that come out of it. And if you really don't like something, occasionally ask why. Give them the opportunity.
Why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah.
To say, hey, where'd you get that from? Because there may be a common ground that is really good instead of going.
Or what were you trying to do with this, rather than go, well, that was kind of dumb.
So make it a process.
Yeah.
And then he said authenticity trumps everything.
Ooh.
And when he was shooting Deadpool, the first movie, it was done on a really small budget, like $58 million. And instead of using more explosions or gunfights to make the movie fun and awesome, he realized they don't have the budget for that. So they focused on making the character interesting.
Because he has I haven't watched that movie.
I've watched one of them. He does, and the character in the comic books was this way. A lot of breaking the fourth wall. He's very sarcastic.
Okay. Yep.
So they did so much more of that because in his words, no pun intended, words were free.
Yeah.
Instead of wasting money on another explosion or special effects, we just made sure Deadpool was fleshed out and interesting
as a person.
Because he was authentic. They did a character dive.
That's sort of like leader.
It's a leader lens.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Yeah.
So
episode 9 and 10.
Yes, it is episode 9 and 10.
Is it really?
Good job.
Yeah.
So look him up and pay attention to Mint Mobile, Aviation Gin. There are a couple other ones I can't remember, but he sold a controlling stake in his ad agency for
Not small money.
it was 9 figures.
Wow.
So he's doing good work, but he's pretty to look at. He's
Like
also
some of the others of us.
yeah.
Yeah.
He also writes good ads. So pay attention to that.
I'll have to do that.
He's really good.
Okay. That's helpful.
Yeah, that's good.
Roy and Ryan.
Oh, okay.
Two big ad guys.
Yeah, I didn't think that through.
That was great.
So hopefully we retained you through the end of this episode, and you didn't leak out of our bucket.
It was dicey there for a little bit. I wasn't afraid we were going to
was.
land that during the whole definitions of terms thing.
Oh, it's tough. But donor retention is important. If you fast forwarded through some of that, go back. It's worth it. Maybe dry, but it's important to do.
It was not dry. It was very interesting.
Okay. Just keep telling yourself.
I'm just going to keep telling myself that.
You speak it into existence.
What's the next episode going to be like, Ryan?
So next week, we are going to talk about something very interesting that's more interesting than this. But remember to send us your emails, your questions, your comments, not related to how boring this might have been. If you couldn't stand it, just say, hey, give me 10 words on why I got to pay attention to donor retention.
Because you'll keep your job would be one of the ways.
That's less than 10, so there we go. It's efficient.
Yeah.
Podcast at Oneicity.
Yeah.
Give us 5-star reviews.
We love those, or 3s.
4 or 3.5, whatever. Write us a review on there too. That's always nice.
And on you.
On YouTube, like and subscribe. It's down here.
But the like, we could use some likes.
Okay, let's
We're
get some
kinda
likes.
short on
Let's
likes.
get some likes.
And it's just the thumbs up button. Costs you nothing.
Yeah, and it doesn't even. We don't even show up in your account, and it's no big deal.
Yeah.
It's free.
It's free.
But our next episode, we're going to talk about how to use Willy Wonka's golden ticket in your next direct mail appeal.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it'll work.
Okay, good.
A world of wonder. I'm Ryan Thomas.
And I'm Steve Thomas.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Not Your Father's Fundraising Podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort. Tune back in next week for another fresh episode of Not Your Father's Fundraising Podcast.